Capuchin Franciscan order was founded in central Italy in the early 13th century. A Capuchin is a man of the church who lives a humble, poor life with his brothers. Capuchins became great missionaries, taking the word of God to the ends of the earth and uplifting the poor and needy. The story of Father David begins in the bustling village of Calangute in Portuguese Goa. Born José David Gregorio Francisco do Rosário Souza Filinto to Professor Jaime and Dona Judith, he was second among 10 siblings, 3 of whom, including him, chose the religious life. He had a calling for priesthood right from a young age, being involved in many church activities as a child and being brought up in a religious family. At the age of 23, he was ordained Father Alex at Rashal Seminary. The name he took was a nod to the patron saint of the church of his birthplace. Even as a diocesan priest, he always felt a calling for more, some greater force pulling him away from his small homeland of Goa. And so it was. One sunny day, the priests went fishing with a visiting monk, a Capuchin friar. Padre David was taken up with the stories of travels to faraway lands, great adventures, and more than anything else, helping the poor and needy. This was what he was searching for. After discerning the will of God and consulting his superiors, he decided to take up the garb of a Capuchin monk. And so he donned the brown hood.
He was in Russian Seminary. He was doing very well. Distinction on the last year of his studies in the seminary. Then when this case for Diego came, my father said, no, I will not let him be with us only. I don't want him to go because I know life of Capuchin. So, and Mandavi was determined to go. And then at last, after a long time I think, my father said, okay, he joined me. He said Mass in October, and soon after before November, he left.
He began his novitiate at Farangipet, Karnataka, within just a few months of becoming a priest. As per the custom of Capuchin monks, a novice becomes fully recognized after making a simple profession of vows, followed by a solemn profession of vows, after learning the ways of the order. A testament to his dedication and character, Padre David made his simple profession of vows, and after just a year was given the rare privilege of being appointed to assistant novice master even before his solemn profession of vows. At the age of 27, he came back home and was based in Alverno Friary at Montegiri, the headquarters of the Capuchin order in Goa. The Capuchins were one of the first orders of the Roman Catholic priests to come to Goa, and they set up their base on top of this hill, overlooking the picturesque village of Giri. He started preaching and teaching in his own native land and tongue, and was chaplain to Mai de Deus for 5 years.
And the life that time was very strict over there. I remember he came to Goa and he wouldn't stay very long, he wouldn't do anything, he went back. Anytime Papa seen him, my father in Goa, or he seen him, they were not allowed to talk. That strict they were. Even in passing through the house, through on the road, he could not enter my house. Even letters were restricted. They were censored.
So he could
Only
not...
once a month, and that's it.
He was then sent on his first overseas mission to Angola at the age of 32, when his superiors had decided he had enough experience to spread the word of God to the far corners of the earth. Angola in the 1950s transitioned from a colonial to provincial status. Separatist political organizations advocating Angolan independence formed in the 1950s despite strong resistance from the Portuguese government, eventually leading to the Angolan War of Independence in 1961. It was in this tense political landscape in 1955 that Padre David arrived. However, the cityscapes and politics were not his concern. He found himself in the deepest parts of the jungle, interacting with tribals and preaching the gospel.
And no, he was staying in a hut. And I remember his food was cooked in the tins of kerosene. There only, where he was sleeping. They had to make their own slippers, no shoes did. The tire of trucks and all, that sole rubber. They had to make their own cassette, their own shirt, whatever. That's why whenever he went in the kitchen, he could not see the waste. When you have so many clothes, you still buy more clothes. The waste now. He could not wear that.
He narrated the story where he said that he and another foreigner priest, a white priest, they were going from village to village, engaged in catechist work, like they were, teaching the people how to pray, and they were celebrating the Eucharist for them. And so they were in this particular village, and they had finished all their work, and they had gone to their hut to rest. And all of a sudden, some of the villagers came banging at their door, and the villagers told them that they had to leave because some cannibals had actually heard about these white priests who were in the group, and they wanted to actually catch all of them and take them back to their villages because they were cannibals and probably eat them. And that's when David said all of them freaked out, and so they just left everything and they ran. They ran away from the village, and of course some of the villagers were actually leading them to a safe place. And so they ran. They just kept on running, and they went for several hours. And the cannibals were actually running after them. And when they were in a climbing up a hill, the cannibals saw them, and the cannibals started shooting arrows at them. And in fact, one arrow hit David in his shoulder. And I actually didn't believe David. I thought it was like kind of exaggerated. And David said, no, it's true. And he actually took out his shirt and he showed me there was a mark on his shoulder. I forget which shoulder it was. And so they carried on walking, and it became nightfall. I think the night actually saved them. And they went to some village where they were safe. So that's a story about his experiences with missionary work in Angola.
In 1962, 1 year after the Civil War began, the situation became dangerous for the missionary priests, who were considered to be sympathizers with the enemy because of their efforts to help the natives. Padre David found himself on a blacklist, and hitmen were sent to kill him. But he refused to leave until the villagers united to smuggle him across the border, bundled him on a plane, and sent him back to India. He arrived in the thriving cosmopolitan multicultural city of Bombay, a stark contrast to the Angolan jungles he just escaped from. He resumed his role of teaching at the Fatima Friary in Kirol and was involved in social work as well as parish work as the vicar of the house. He worked there for 4 years till 1966. It was now time for his next overseas mission, to the Philippines. Padre David was sent to Santa Mesa in Manila, the name of the area christened by the Jesuits who came there during the Spanish era of the Philippines. He was assigned to the Sacred Heart Parish and was in charge of the Chapel of San Roque. The missionary goal was to baptize the children of the area and unite couples in the Holy Sacrament of Matrimony, both of which were conducted at the chapel. They also held a block rosary movement, where the leader riding in a jeep with a microphone and amplifier led the rosary. After 6 years in the Philippines, it was time for him to come back home to Goa. He was posted in Naveli for the next 10 years, from 1972 to 82. During these years, he was appointed as the assistant parish priest at Grace Church, Margao. And it is at this time that he looked after the construction of the church. He was also responsible for the building of a new block for the orientation of brothers at Naveli.
10 in number. Bandavis is number 2 and I am number 9. The gap is 14 years. When he was in the seminary, I was not born. And we didn't have much in contact with him during this time because I was very young. Our friendship matured only when he came from Angola. On Saturdays he used to come, make a point to come on Saturdays because also there was a small Saturday bazaar where I used to get some bhajis, kotkote and other things and to enjoy it. Like pork dishes, and my mother used to make him special dishes for him because he loves pork like socotel and all that, etc. etc. And early in the morning, before we could get up, he was out on his errand, like saying Sunday masses here, there and all. He has not missed a single parish where he did not preach and said a mass. Not a single parish in Goa. Rajdut was his inseparable friend. He was so much attached to him, to that he loved it. He used to repair himself. And he was so attached to him that we also realized that his second life or second wife is the motorbike Rajdut.
The next 4 years saw him at Our Lady of Victory Church in Revora, after which he was back in Montegiri for another 5 years till 1991. The next year, he was appointed parish priest of St. Lawrence Church in Sinkeri, a beautiful church overlooking the Arabian Sea from atop the hill. He also undertook prison ministry while posted there. In 1992, he volunteered to go for his next mission to Papua New Guinea at the age of 69. Papua New Guinea is one of the world's least explored terrains, with numerous uncontacted tribes and hundreds of undiscovered plant and animal species. It is one of the most culturally diverse countries in the world, and also the most rural, as only a small percentage of its people live in urban areas. Capuchins were among the first missionaries to the tribal region of Papua New Guinea, bringing the light of the gospel to a people who had never even heard of Christ. The hilly terrain, combined with a lack of roads and warring tribes, made missionary work here very dangerous. In order to aid their missionary efforts over the dangerous mountain areas and into the densely populated valleys, the Capuchins managed to procure a Cessna 180 airplane, which they named after the patron of their mission, the Blessed Virgin Mary. Pad David arrived to Papua New Guinea in this airplane, landing in a field in the midst of the natives. His daily food was mostly yams, sweet potatoes and grass, and on rare occasions wild boar. Besides explaining the word of God, Pad David helped the natives in their daily struggles, sometimes doubling up as a midwife when nobody was available. He often narrated an incident where a field worker went into labor, delivered her baby, strapped it to her back, and continued working in the field. He was in awe of these people. After 7 long years in Papua New Guinea, Pad David came back to Goa at the age of 76. For the next 6 years till 2005, he was assigned back to the parish of Sinkeri. From 2005 to 2008, he was the chaplain of St. Alex Convent in Kalangut.
The Filinto family always looked up to Mandavid as a great spiritual guide. Over the years, he married so many of us, and sadly, he buried many in the family as well. He has administered sacraments of baptism and First Holy Communion to so many nieces, nephews, grandnieces and nephews, great grandnieces and nephews. I particularly have a unique story. He administered the First Holy Communion to my mother in Sambalda years before she heard of even my father, let alone marry into the Filinto family. Decades later, he administered the First Holy Communion to me. And decades later, he administered the First Holy Communion to my two daughters. So, three generations of First Holy Communion. Mandavid loved kids. He had so many in the family to fuss over. Whenever he was around, he was tasked with feeding a lot of the fussy eaters. And he did it with style, weaving stories of aeroplanes and airports and he made it happen. Mandavid always kept in touch with extended family. He made it a point to visit them occasionally, and if not possible, to keep in touch via letters. I remember when I was a young girl, he brought over some relatives from Bangladesh. And I was like, wow, we have relatives in Bangladesh? Years later, I opened the door to a large Oriental family with him, and he introduced them as this is our cousin Carlos and his family from Singapore. I was surprised yet again. We have half relatives in Singapore. He enriched our lives. He truly did.
He spent the golden years of his life in Alverno Friary, looked after lovingly by his Capuchin brothers, and visited by his family. He passed away peacefully on the 10th of January 2018. This 23rd July 2020, he would have been 97 years old.